Dzień dobry, dzieci. It is the Flurza Experience, a show about card games and so much more. Yes, my name is Flake, and I'm joined here, as always, by a very good friend and a bakery brute. So, when I was writing this one, my friend, in Flesh and Blood, there are multiple classes of heroes that you can choose. There's like ninja, warrior, guard.
I've been doing my research.
I was going to ask you about that. One of the classes is brute. And each class can have a talent. So, like, you can have, like, Shadow Ninja or Light Warrior or something, you know. And I think Bakery Brute is a pretty good talent to associate to the class of Brute. Like, Baker, like, you're a Bakery Brute, like pastries and such. So I figured that was a good one. That's very thematic.
Do I make them or do I eat them?
Well, you can do both.
I eat them, right?
I mean...
I'm not good at making them. Dominica's good at making. My wife, she's good at making it, but I'm not good at making anything. I mean, I can make a brownie or something like that. That's very easy to do.
Well, can I ask you what you're going to make when I come visit? Like, so...
Dude, it's going to be epic. It's going to be everything. We're going to make cake. We're going to make, we're going to have Danishes for sure. We're going to have everything.
Do you have a spare bike for me, by chance?
I have 2 bikes, so you can cop one.
Okay. Well, I don't want to ruin like your nice bikes. I don't need it. I'm just saying, like, if sorry, not
a bike is a bike.
when I visit, because it's gonna happen. When I visit, I want to go on like a tour. Yeah.
Tour the Ponchki.
Yes, like, and be like, this is the famed Ponchki that Pani Stasha of this castle of many years ago made, and the recipe has lived on forever. That's what I want to do. I want to go on like how like in Hollywood they do like the tours of celebrity houses. I want to do the tour of Pavel approved Ponchki.
Good. We could totally do it. Go in with a camera, I just want to know like how the people working there will feel about it though. Like, hello, we're here.
Hello, Flurza 15. Flurza 15.
Flurza 15.
Hello.
Hopefully it works there.
Yeah. They'll be like, what are you talking about? And I'll be like, Flurza Piench. Something.
She's like, what, 5 Ponchki? Yeah, no problem.
Perfect. Give it to me. Yeah. That's called a Flurza dozen. 5.
Yes.
5. Easy. Yeah, so
Bakery Brew, I gotta take it.
I was gonna say, I mean, that's pretty good. And like Arya was here last week, and I got to do all the touristy stuff that, I mean, I don't want to say like I've never done, but it was actually quite fun to be like, to spend like, a whole week where it's like every day practically.
Yeah.
We're doing stuff around the city that like one day was like, okay, we're going to go for dinner and do the aquarium like in downtown. And then another day it's like, we do a brewery tour and go to like a bar arcade. Then we went to like Chinatown, Koreatown, did some like Asian food, went to do some like shopping around here. Then it's like went to Niagara Falls, went to the CN Tower, all this stuff. Yeah, but it's like I live here, so it's kind of
you don't do it when you live in the city, right? Yeah. But when you have someone over, you actually go to those places and you check them out. And I also do the same thing whenever we have anyone over that is not from Poland or from Warsaw. It's just nice to show them around and kind of show them the stuff that you kind of used to do, but you don't really do because it's now like just super touristy. So it's not like something that you plan on doing during the weekend. Actually taking everybody there is just super cool.
Yeah. Guess what her favorite stops were? Her most excited stops were.
I saw Taco Bell.
Yes. Taco Bell and Walmart.
Dude, I am the same. I am the same. Sorry to say, I know Taco Bell is not the best food and not the best Mexican food in any way. But whenever I go to the States, there are 2 things, like Taco Bell and root beer. Those are like my 2 things whenever, North America centric place. Always root beer and like gallons every day, and then Taco Bell.
And so her flight, I had to bring her to the airport at like 3 p.m. on Saturday, and like it's the morning, and I'm like, all right, well, we got like 4 hours, before we got to think about going. Like, what do you want to do? Like, just want I'll pack and do whatever. Kind of want to go to Taco Bell again. I said, saddle up, let's ride, baby. just. Yeah, and what's funny is that I got my meal and like she got hers. We drove back and we're just sitting in the living room eating. And she's eating and I could see like there's this turmoil in her face, like this uncertainty. And I said, "What's up?" And she's like, I kind of want to eat it, but I also want to save it for the plane. So, so I'm like, oh, so I gave her the rest of my Taco Bell. I gave her my Taco Bell, and I'm like, here, you eat yours. You can have mine. Bring it on the plane. I have this whenever I want. But that was her like number one concern, and I've like wrapped it in like a and put it in a Ziploc and in her purse. And she was worried that they were gonna confiscate it. I'm like, it's all good. You're okay.
It's gonna go through. Food goes through.
Yeah, I mean, it might be the most explosive thing on the plane, though.
Yeah, especially after you eat it.
Oh Lord! All right, well, there.
Dude, but I get it. It's very hard to get Taco Bell in Europe overall. Like there are some countries that still have it. Like I remember we used to have it in Poland, but it didn't really kick off because I feel like when it comes to Poland, like the only foreign cuisine that kind of made it is of course Italian food, because I mean pizza, pasta, everybody likes that here. But anything, that is too weird for us, like won't go through. And I feel like Taco Bell didn't make it. Of course, McDonald's survived, Burger King survived, KFC survived, but Taco Bell, sorry, didn't make it. Same goes for Dunkin' Donuts. Dunkin' Donuts tried twice to be on the Polish market. They couldn't make it because,
really?
I mean, pączki are better than the donuts.
Yeah, you're already dug into that whole thing. It's like Dunkin' Donuts in Canada actually was here for a long time, and then Tim Hortons just like crushed it. Absolutely.
That one's million times better. Like million times better.
Tim Hortons?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will say this. And I know I say this all the time, and like I get it because I have a lot of American friends who, when they come here, they want to go to Tim Hortons, and I tell them that like Tim Hortons has become such an industrial machine where it used to be when I was in high school, like 20 years ago, I used to go to Tim Hortons because it was like super cheap. I couldn't go out to bars or anything. I was like 15 or 16. I was still driving, like I was driving around. So what me and my buddies used to go to Tim Hortons because we couldn't get into bars, but coffee was like 85 cents. A donut was like 50 cents.
Perfect.
And the coffee was exceptionally good. And the donuts were baked on site. So the place smelled amazing. Those times now they're gone. All the donuts come in frozen, like made in a factory. Yeah. It's gross.
I think it's the same with Dunkin' Donuts because I remember I used to like have it as a kid. They were awesome. But now it's so industrialized and so fake and so processed that they lost the taste and everything that was cool about it.
Now the only donuts, and I worked at Krispy Kreme for a year. And I finally went to one again this past Sunday, actually. A couple of days ago, I went to Krispy Kreme for the first time, I'll say, in about 15 to 20 years. Randomly. I drove past one, and we were going to a card tournament, and I was like, U-turn, let's go, detour. And we went, and I picked up some, and I was like, okay, these were fresh, they were good, they were amazing, those are the best ones. But Tim Hortons, trash. No offense.
Oh, okay. So
sorry, I don't. Looking much better.
Good.
All right.
Good. Yeah, I need to get one of those. And it's funny that you mentioned that because we are recording this today, and we're in Poland. We have something called Children's Day. So children get lots of sweets, they get presents, and we're probably also gonna go do something with our parents later on.
Dzień dobry, dzieci.
Dzień dobry, dzieci. Indeed.
Perfect. Dzieci. Dzisiaj dzieci day. How do you say?
Dziecka.
Dzień dziecka. Okay, cool. Well, happy Dzień dziecka to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm a child for sure.
For sure.
So yeah, episode 18, back on track. We're finally legal to drink alcohol now, Flake. Especially in Europe and in Poland, you're fully legal now. You can go to clubs, you can drink beer. It's all good.
Damn right. In Canada, it's 19, except where I grew up in Quebec, 18. And I'm sure they would lower that to 15 if they could.
And yeah, that's awesome. But what's even more awesome is today's topic, which is we're going to talk about the wonders of Jank.
Ooh.
Jank decks. Oh, so good. So good. My perfect topic. You chose this one, and I'm really happy that you did because, it's one of those things that needs to be discussed, kind of running away from all the competitive cookie cutter decks. What about Jank decks and those crazy ideas that people sometimes have and kind of the crazy decks that they build around it? It's awesome. So anything that's odd, Yeah, but they give a lot of joy, so that's the most important thing for us.
I appreciate that. I like that. I like decks that bring joy, and I also like the Day Gone rumor report, Mr. Pavel Burza. Please.
Not happening. Bold caps lock on.
Yes, bold caps lock on indeed. We might be retiring the Day Gone rumor report.
Yeah, it's just getting old.
It's just this. It's the
We
same.
need something new. We need something new.
Renfree also not happening. So
I don't know.
oh, maybe. You don't know.
Ooh, maybe it will.
Well, it might. It might happen.
I mean, it's June 1st. Everything was going to happen June 1st. So
that's true.
Where is it?
For the very astute observer who follows along on the Reddit threads and such like that, whenever somebody asks a question to us on Reddit and when is premium tokens? That's one voice. The other one is when is Dagon coming? I don't know why I sound like I'm an angry man at a deli.
I don't know.
But
yeah, you sound like an angry man at a deli.
Yeah, exactly. Why
with
is
a little bit of Russian
soup too
with a little
cold?
bit of Russian kind of like spin there.
Kinda. I'm channeling a little bit of like Mel Brooks and Larry David in this, but it's kinda
appreciate that.
Not happening. It's not happening. But yeah, if you do watch or listen or look at Reddit when someone asks us for something like this, my answer is always June 1st. No year attached, but today, the day that we're recording this, is in fact June 1st. So today maybe you might see Renfree. And by today, I mean 2 days ago.
The wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably I need to talk to Vlad that we need to, move everything that we're doing to next year, June 1st, and just drop everything. Like all the card drops that we have remaining, all the remaining journeys and stuff like that. Everything June 1st, like...
It'll be the ultimate vindication to everything I've written. Yes. Imagine.
Yeah, we just radio silent for 1 year now and then just drop everything.
That would really, really pull me out of the muck here because... pretty sure the Gwent community right now, for the most part, hates me. At least the Reddit community.
Same here.
I'm pretty sure that we are quite villainous because we basically answer questions. First of all, we answer questions that we can answer or we have any legitimate answer for. So just a heads up. If we don't answer your question that you posted, there's a good chance that it was either really stupid, or
it was worded badly.
Well, when I say worded badly,
consistent balance in it.
Well, I mean,
or Dagon or tokens.
When you open the question with CDPR is clearly incompetent. Here is my question. It's like, yeah, disregard. Sorry.
For sure, your question is going to make it. I think it's just a place to vent. They're all just venting. Doesn't matter.
I'm okay with that. Listen, venting is important. It's very good for your mental health. But I also there was a message that was posted, I think, on one of our YouTube videos where when we're talking about feedback, and where you and I were in agreement that, if you can present feedback in a constructive way, it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. If it's constructive, there's something you can pull out of there. And then somebody posted that it is up to us to receive the feedback in a constructive way. So I said, so when someone says, if somebody says that Gwent is dog shit, and that is the end of the statement, what constructiveness can I pull out of that? Like, hey, we recognize that you don't like it.
There's something wrong with Gwent.
Yeah, so I
need to filter.
So I responded with, okay, how can I pull anything constructive? And then people were writing these paragraphs about how I'm supposed to sleuth out,
Look, I mean, it's taking away responsibility from others to convey their thoughts in a nice and meaningful way. Why should the person receiving be the one that needs to be translating in a polite way something that is totally impolite said by someone else, right? It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. I get it that feedback is important, that we should be receiving feedback, and we do, and we take it into account, even the hateful ones, because the more people raising their pitchfork pretty much show the more that there is a problem, which we're aware of. And that's it. Like, it's not like we're gonna, instantly jump in and hotfix everything because people are complaining about it, right? You just need to wait till the end of the month.
Everything?
And done.
Can you just hotfix everything?
Yeah,
everything.
I can hotfix everything.
Every week.
Dude, I can hotfix anything you want. But
every day, everything.
Will it make it to anything? No.
Can I ask you a question? Because maybe there's just this, because I'm not 100% aware. I have an assumption, but I believe that, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. Let's say you make a decision today that you want to hotfix something. What is the, let's say, okay, Aaron Dyke needs a hotfix. much like you saw a card that needs an errata.
Yeah.
Briar needs an errata, or this needs an errata, or Counterspell is too strong. From the
Counterspell
date,
is fine.
Counterspell is fine. Not
Yeah,
when
that's
there's
why they brought it back to modern. It's fine.
not when there's 20 copies of them in a deck. In various
I
forms
mean,
and
you gotta
fashions.
win somehow. You can't just counter everything.
I guess you win
You
with
need
like
a win condition, and
yes,
you need bodies on the board,
you need
or if not, just a win con.
a 1/1 Merfolk with hexproof and like Island Walk or something.
Smacking everything.
Yeah, one a turn. Bing, bing. So when you make that decision, let's say today's June 1st, you're like, we're gonna hotfix Briar or Chain or whatever cards. What is the time frame between decision to implementation? What is the shortest possible amount of time?
Ooh, depends on the case. If it's a case of changing provision to a card, I think it could be done within a week. Like on PC, it's very quick to do. On other platforms, it will require resubmitting a specific build to verification to both Google and Apple in this case. So it takes a little bit more time.
It's like
Because
2
they
weeks.
need to be green lighted. No, I would say you can easily make it within a week. We've been in situations where we needed to hotfix things within like 2 or 3 days even, and it's doable, but it's pulling out of a lot of time and resources from team members who should be focused on other stuff in this case. And unless it's game breaking and has a big influence on esports, then it's not something that is pretty much worth the resources in this case, unless we want to have delays on other things like the next update or the next card drops, which we're already working on and stuff like that. So, I mean, it is important, but it's not something that cannot be done in a very, very quick manner.
I was just
Hopefully
curious.
Nobody uses this as ammunition against us.
Well, no, but in reality, well, that's the thing. Is like the reason I ask is because sometimes people out there are constantly calling for hot fixes, and in my mind, I want to know if it's even a plausible thing. Because in their defense, if it's something that can be done within a week, sometimes that warrants the consideration of actually having it done. However, if it takes like 2 weeks, then you're thinking, okay, it takes 2 weeks. But the problem is a patch is dropped like at the beginning of most months. So it takes time to identify if the new balance changes are actually worthwhile. So how long does that take? A week to properly evaluate? 2 weeks? And then you got to spend a week to hotfix it?
You need 2 weeks to evaluate something.
So let's say
to gather like proper data for it. Right?
Sure.
I know people are always saying that we're hiding behind this magical word code data, that we have, we're the gatekeepers of data, and that based on that we make decisions and we don't listen to everybody. No, it actually is more of a case that you need to like take this data and then put it across kind of what you want to do. And implementing changes is quite difficult. I think I mentioned on one of the episodes that when we had some input from the designers, like from actually testing those things and having them implemented within the game itself and within the build, it takes quite a lot of time for these things to happen. So it's not that you can do this like in a week, unless you're sure that it's just a matter of cutting one thing from it and then just moving on, right? But it doesn't really make sense, because that's one change, and that's one change kind of in a vacuum, and it's for the next update you have more things kind of lined up and planned that you want to implement. And then you need to test those like very, very properly with the cards which are currently overperforming or underperforming. And, there's a lot of kind of things that go into this. So it's not something that you can do super quickly. Unless, like I said, it's game breaking, right? If it's game breaking, then you need to pretty much break your back in order to fix it, because it has, it can have like big consequences when it comes to everything esports, but also to, I don't know if it's like a thing that causes the game to desync or give you an auto win that just warrants people to go in and abuse the hell out of that.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Because let's say today is June 1st and there's a new patch that drops. Let's say today, so you take 2 weeks to evaluate how this new balance changes impacts the meta, and then on June 14th, you're like, oh, okay, this needs to clearly get fixed. So let's say you rush it and it comes out in 4 days. So now it's June. Let's say June 18th or 19th. It's June 18th or 19th, and suddenly you have this hotfix that gets pushed out, and you got about another less than 2 weeks for it to take.
Difficult.
However, you've already planned the next patch and you don't know how these hotfix changes are affecting the next patch.
Yeah, that's difficult.
So that's why
things start to then move and shift in the timeline.
Well, and they
need to like last longer, like extending seasons in this case, just to have a little bit more time for implementation. Because don't get me wrong, like you need to implement the changes, but they also need to be tested inside and outside, because we have people testing outside also stuff, and they need to be QA'd. They need to go into a build. The build needs to be checked once again. Any bugs that are in it need to be you pretty much, you need to get rid of them, and then you need to like submit the builds for them to go live, and they need to go through, like third parties that need to go through them, test them on their side, and then you move on into implementation, and then it's just a matter of just flicking some switches and making that whole thing go live, and the update to automatically update your client, and then you get rid of the old client version, so the new version propagates for everybody, so there's not people playing on an old version of the game. So then that's when you have not supported on your game version, and yeah, it's a process. It's a process. Well, it's not something that you do overnight.
That's what I just want to clarify, that it's you guys have you have the capability to do it. It's just that when balance patches occur once a month, it's hard to squeeze in a hotfix that won't kind of throw off balance. At least a hotfix that is well kind of, worked on and tested and such. And again, I'm not trying to discount it, because there is clearly, look, I'm somebody who desperately wants a balanced card game and such. Always. I listen, I'm not out here saying, no, it's fine. It's not fine. It's absolutely not fine. But at the same time, there needs to be, to me, hotfixes are for bugs, not for balance. Because
I agree.
And for those out there who think that balance needs to occur more than once a month, like with the patches that occur, I mean, once a month balance patches in any card game is already go play any other card game. And I know I say this a lot, but people who only play Gwent are spoiled because they don't understand how the process works in other card games, that once a month balance patches is already probably 3 to 4 times more frequent than most other card games. Like easily.
Yeah.
Easily. And I'm not talking about Bobo card games that come and go. I'm talking about Hearthstone or Runeterra or MTGA. MTGA doesn't get balanced. It doesn't get balanced.
Well, they have the alchemy thing that they
have alchemy, but that's a new thing. But they have bans. They just outright delete cards. Ban. Yeah. Anyway, let's go to Jank decks, and we'll talk about we could talk about the other stuff throughout our tenure here at the Flurza experience. But Jank decks, I think the first thing that we need to do is explain to people what a Jank deck is, because everyone has their own opinion of it, and some might not even know what a Jank deck is. And I think Jank/meme are not necessarily interchangeable. A meme deck and a Jank deck are not necessarily entirely the same, but for those who might know what a meme deck is, you kind of know the path that we're about to trot on here. So, Pavel, tell us what a Jank deck is.
Actually, I was scouring through the internet to actually find a definition, and I actually went on Reddit, but for Magic Arena Reddit, and there was someone, a username called Ariel, Knight of Windgrace, which is an awesome name. I'm new to MTG, but I'm not new to MTG, but I'm new to MTGA, so Arena. Never heard of the use of term Jank. Just wanted to know what it means. And he also said, I'm a non-English speaker. So the best, most upvoted answer, which I found here, is: imagine that you have an old car, a really old car. Most of it is replacement parts. Bits of it are falling off. There's an axe embedded in the middle of the back seat. Somehow, though, you're able to make the thing run, like, constantly. It doesn't go very fast, and if anything goes wrong, it will totally break down. But the impressive thing is that it works at all. That's Jank.
That's a great description, and that's a great one. Vivid picture painted about what it is. It is exactly that. It's a contraption. It's a piecemeal machine that you built where, like Pavel said, and like that Redditor very astutely mentioned is that if one of the dominoes doesn't fire off, the entire thing is completely useless. It is a house of cards that is so elegant and beautiful when completed, but any small gust of wind or change in air pressure just destroys the entire thing. So it's a deck, I'll say, that has a spectacular finish, but rarely.
Yes.
It's the long shot.
You need to get to that, and it takes a lot of steps in between.
You know what Jank is? Jank is if you pay attention to horse racing, which I don't, but I did this year because the long shot horse won this year at the Kentucky Derby. Did you hear about this?
Yeah.
So Rich Strike is the name of the horse, which was a last minute day of replacement, 80-1 long shot, won the whole damn thing, and then when it was over, they're like approaching the horse at the end of the race to get the interviews and rein in the horse and bring it in and put the wreath on it, and the horse started biting other horses and jockeys and was just a complete asshole. And I was like,
exactly.
That's Jank.
Not only you win, but also you have the attitude, right?
That's Jank. Jank is that horse. Jank is the long shot that comes in, surprises everyone, and when it wins, it is spectacular. It is not graceful at all, and it is absolutely ruthless. That's Jank.
It's pretty much like, you could say that to some extent, that the way the thing kind of works is kind of like it's broken, right? It should not be like workable. And it's one of those decks that you're piloting that whenever there is like a mistake or you don't draw into like one or two key cards, your whole kind of game plan goes out the window. And most of the time, these are just like combo decks. So decks that consist of a combination of specific cards in order to get the outcome that you want. And they're less cookie cutter, and they're less kind of like, streamlined. So yeah, it's hard to get the W on these, but once you do, it feels amazing, and especially that people don't expect it to happen.
Exactly. These are those types of lists that it's like, you'll see clips of this off of most other card games. You'll see the most spectacular Hearthstone weirdo OTK combos that legitimately the situation has to be like, okay, my opponent has to have exactly 27 or less life. I need to have these exact 7 cards in my deck, in my hand, and I have to have no cards left in deck. And like, it needs to be all this stuff. But when it pops off, your opponent is like, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
But your win rate is like 15%, but it doesn't matter because you're having a good time.
Exactly.
Jank decks are so much fun. Have you ever played like a true Jank deck? Like, what is your most ridiculous Jank sauce that you ever kind of put together? Because I know that when I played Magic against you the first time, I considered what you were doing Jank, but I thought it was Jank because I wasn't aware of it, and it was such a weird gimmick where it's like, okay, I have 50 life, and I'm going to tap this artifact to shoot you for 30 or something like that.
Yeah, it was something like that. But that's actually, that wasn't very janky, because that was one of the things that was quite possible. Like I've piloted some janky stuff. I consider like there's this deck in MTG and Modern called Storm, and it is one that has been competitive to some extent, and it pretty much relies on you making a shit ton of mana by replaying cards and like having like the storm count, so you're able to replay things at instant speed, and you're gathering a lot of mana, and you're also drawing into more cards, which you're playing them again. Once you're playing them, you're creating even more mana, and then you have one card at the end that is called Grape Shot, and you Grape Shot your opponent for 20, and you just destroy them. And for like the rest of your game plan throughout the game when it starts, it's just getting your pretty much dorks that make your stuff a little bit. So it's Electromaster and Baral Chief of Compliance that make your stuff cheaper, your instants and sorceries. And then you just need to pull the right cards. You need Metamorphose to kind of adjust your mana because it's red and blue. And you just need a turn where you're making your storm count go. And then once you have enough mana, you either do that or you create like a shit ton of 1/1 goblins that you destroy your opponent with. So That's one of the ones that has been kind of janky. Recently also playing in Arena this interesting deck that relies on me destroying artifacts. So when I destroy and sacrifice artifacts, I'm causing one of these anvils to hit my opponent by one. So I'm just trying to do those multiple times and just hit by one, by one, by one, by one until I get to a turn where my opponent is out. And also by creating a lot of like artifact constructs, 1/1s and stuff like that. So yeah, I like these kind of weird ones where you create a lot of small creatures, but if someone has like, big removal, then pretty much all of them go to the graveyard and you're pretty much your game plan. You need to restart from scratch. But I mean, it's fun. It's fun unless someone plays like Meat Hook Massacre on you or something like that, which destroys everything. And whenever one of my creatures is destroyed, then that my opponent gets 1 life. So that's very hard for me to kind of catch up on those. So whoever he's like destroying and gaining life, that becomes a problematic thing for me. But I just like it because these are combo decks, right? And I've always liked combo decks because I feel like they require you to think a little bit more. Some people think that maybe they're uninteractive because they're not similar to, I don't know, like a aggro deck or any other thing, but they just require a different game plan, a different mentality to pilot. And I've always kind of liked having this, let me do my thing. I'm not very interactive, but once I do this and once I go through the motions and I nail it and I draw into the perfect stuff, you get this like rush of adrenaline at the end where you're like, boom, the final card resolves.
Got him. Yeah, that feeling of like, all right, pass priority, and they're like, any response, and they're like, no, resolves, and you're like, suck it, we got him. Those are my favorite. I think like in terms of MTG, I think one of the closest I've ever had to playing like random jank was I played Divine Visitation with March of Multitudes, like in that post Dominaria meta, where Divine Visitation meant that any time that you created a token, it would become a 4/4 flying Vigilant Angel. And March of Multitudes was like tap white, green, X to create X tokens. So, excuse me.
I love those cards.
And in a Selesnya deck that played ramp, like you'd be like by turn 6, you could jam out like 5 or 6 4/4 angels in a turn, and they were all vigilant, and they all flew, and it was just and then you play Lyra, like, to make them all have lifelink and +1/+1, and you're just off to the races. But in the meantime, you're, like, getting slaughtered by stuff. But when it does work, because first you need to find Divine Visitation and pay for it, it costs 5, and that's a slow turn. And then you got to make sure you're not getting your ass whooped in the meantime. That's probably the closest I've ever played to jank. A jank deck was just, like, this Angel Swarm. But, I mean...
But Lyra was good. That's a good, the Dawnbringer one, right? She's
Lyra Dawnbringer. Yeah, she's probably my favorite Magic card. She was the first card I think I ever really invested in. Like I went out and paid $20 for like the card. That was the first, and then Carnage Tyrant because I was playing Selesnya. So I was like Carnage Tyrant, Lyra
went up in price like crazy.
Recently?
No, at one time. Now I think it's not worth as much, or I think it went down on price for sure.
At the time, it was like a $50 card when it was printed, and then standard rotation happened and dunked on all those powerful cards because they weren't modern worthy or anything. But No Control, Mike Torek created what I thought was jank that actually became the #1 deck in MTGA, believe it or not. So Mike Torek, aka No Control, who
he's an awesome card game player.
It's uncanny because
the guy is amazing.
He is amazing. He picked up Flesh and Blood, and he's now like fully committed to Flesh and Blood. He bought a box, and that's
how you start.
Well, he won some tickets. I lent him my deck at one of the major tournaments in Philadelphia. Yeah, and he played it, and I think he went like 3-3 in his first ever games against anybody that wasn't me. But 3-3 in a major tournament, which is great. With his like prize tickets, he like traded up some stuff and then ended up buying a box. In his box, he pulled the legendary equipment for Ranger, and Ranger's a high skill cap hero to play. And he's like, "All right, we're doing this." So he made a very fringe deck that he thought was good and everybody was on the fence about, and all of a sudden some of the best players in the world started playing it and respecting it, and he's like, yeah, I was there. I was already there. The thing about him is that he went to, when he was playing MTGA like a couple of years ago, in the M20 meta with Risen Reef, he created a deck. Him and somebody else created a deck that used quasi-duplication on Risen Reef, and basically created a situation with Risen Reef. It was like this Teamer Elementals list that spammed Cavalier of Thorns and Risen Reef, and just created, and basically by like turn 5, you'd have like 15 lands in play. And
nice.
It was insane. And the guy
can do anything.
But he created this list, and it used Nexus of Fate, and it used
awesome card.
and it used another one of those Simic. It used another Simic Planeswalker that would basically cycle through your entire deck with Nexus of Fate, so you just have infinite turn loops. And as you're doing it, you're creating more and more lands, which then deal damage to your. And it was just ridiculous. I'm like, he basically said, if I get everything going by turn 6, the game's over, because my opponent never gets a turn again. It's like, okay, like that's insane. And he brought that list. Well, he didn't, but he played it. Other people picked up on the list and brought it to rank 1, MTGA rank 1, and then started doing videos and articles about it, and to the point where like Mike and the other dude who created it, another dude from Team Rankstar created the deck, went into that person's chat, like I think it was like LSV, I don't think it was LSV, it was another like prominent Magic player, and said, hey, I just want you to know that I was the one who created the deck. Here's the receipts, here's the video, the deck list, everything from like 2 weeks ago. I know you're just finding it, but they published it on like MTG Goldfish. And then the Magic Pro actually was like, looked into it, and he's like, oh wow, okay, you are the author of this, I give you full credit, like, and gave him all the dap in the world. But
that's really nice.
But to me it was jank. But like, this is the other part of the conversation that I want to have.
Sometimes the jank decks, they make it into it. Like turn 6 is good, but in like modern, turn 3 is like what is your sweet spot, right?
Yeah, but what I want to talk about also is that when does jank become like legit? Like what is the
once it's consistent enough,
I guess. And like because once the deck passes the 50% win rate mark, it's no like, is it still jank? Because it
might feel like janky, like because sometimes you draw into like pieces of the puzzle of the whole deck, but you sometimes they don't, the pieces, they don't go well together because you're missing something. But once it's consistent enough, or you have a card which is kind of your let's say your engine or something that lets you combo off, if you have more than 4 copies of that, so you have like at least 8 copies of something, you're more there is a bigger chance and probability that you will actually run into them. And if you do, then you're comboing off once again. And I feel like there are a couple, like you can have things that let you draw into stuff, and kind of things that let you execute like your final plan, which is kind of how you kind of win in this case, right?
But so in terms of like, so jank in Magic, I think is a lot easier to come by, because you can,
because there's a lot of cards to kind of pick and choose from, right? And I think there's a lot of possibilities for players, and there's a lot of things that are not very discovered. I mean, you can have really crazy jank combinations in Commander, for example. I think Commander is a great example of where you have 100 cards in your deck, and you only are allowed to have 1 copy of each card, that you're able to come up with like these crazy ideas and combos and mixtures of different things that, if you look on paper, is like, how does this all go together? But when you execute the plan, it's just perfect, and it's you have some really good like Commander decks that even that consists of so many cards are able to be super consistent and can be super competitive and destroying stuff. So, I mean, sky's the limit here.
And when it comes to, and again, like in the Gwent scene, when it comes to jank a lot of times is referred to as meme. But like, but Keltulis is not jank in any way, shape, or form. Is Keltulis jank? Keltulis is just a different style of play. It's more of a slow burn, counterintuitive. Not, you don't want to put too many units on the board. Yeah. It's more of like an upkeep style gameplay of you're just trying to maintain a similar board state and maintain an advantage. You're not trying to grow your board necessarily. You're more so trying to preserve a favorable board state. But Jank in Gwent, I would say, is something like which one?
Colgrim.
Colgrim's not Jank either. Colgrim, I don't believe is janky.
Rat Swarm. I was gonna say, what about Rat Clog?
Rat Swarm is absolutely jank, and it's awesome too because again, it will pull off a win. A good player playing Rat Swarm will probably not have a positive win rate in pro rank, but in the lower tiers, like in the ranks of like above 10 or so, or 5 or 5 and above, probably will have a decent opportunity to go ahead and catch some people off guard with it because they're not necessarily aware of what's going on. But Rat Swarm, in my opinion, Rat Clog is certainly jank in Gwent.
Yeah, that's jank. That's jank for sure.
I'm like trying to think of like Hearthstone and stuff like that. Jank in Hearthstone, I played some nasty jank in Hearthstone, but like this was before I was ever really intrigued by reaching the highest peaks like Legend or Pro Rank or whatever. And in I was just so on the Paladin control had a sweet spot after Old Gods. In the Old Gods set, Paladin came out with like there was N'Zoth, and N'Zoth was the one where when you play it, resurrect all units that had with Death Rattle that died that game. So you'd bring back Tyrion, and that was your end game win condition. So it was all just killing stuff. And I think the highest I ever got with it was like rank 4 or something. And eventually
that's pretty good.
I was happy with it for a janky style deck. I think it was tier 3 at best, but it was just fun to do. Whereas everybody was playing Control Warrior or Face Hunter. Like those were really the only two options at the time.
Yeah.
Or Shaman. Or janky stuff. Yeah. But Rat Clog for me is probably a poster child of what a janky deck in Gwent can be. I think that's probably the best representation.
Yeah, it depends. Like for me, some things feel kind of janky. Like that's why I said Kotulis and Colgrim and stuff like that. Mill is jank for sure.
I'll say Mill is jank because it doesn't convert as regularly, and like also part of it is probably the fact that if a janky deck will take advantage of certain meta states, like slower metas, or like certain janky decks that don't necessarily put too much stuff on the board, interactability, will probably have a better time against Control, because Control's going to not find any targets. But a deck that plays a lot of pressure might have issues with it. So Mill is the same way, because Mill can definitely exploit particular metas and be more successful against, or like hyper successful in certain metas, but just be dog shit in other metas.
Yeah, and I feel like the only problem with jank and kind of going against Control is like sometimes you have problems because you get countered. Like an MTG, like that if your opponent knows what you're doing, because the problems that I sometimes have with janky decks when people bring them to like local FNMs or you're just sitting across from someone and they're like, play some cards, and you're like, well, this is not something that I'm used to. It's like, what are you doing? So if I play this card, then I'm able to generate infinite mana or infinite counters, which go here. And then if I use this now, then you're pretty much dead because I'm doing X amount of damage to you, or I'm poisoning you for something and you're out, and you need to kind of know how to play around it. And the first time you might go against it, you're like, I don't know how to go against this. And or B, kind of, you need to like have your fingers crossed that your opponent where counters something that's less important, or make a mistake, and then whenever you're playing this card that it gives you the win, then it gets to stick on the board, and you're able to actually execute your game plan. Even if sometimes you play the card, you need to go through the motions in order for the whole effect to happen. So, for example, like there are these turns where you're supposed to be sacrificing stuff, or you're supposed to be playing like things in a proper sequence, and if you miss anything within the sequence, the whole thing falls apart, and you're kind of like, okay, so yeah,
sequencing.
Scoop up next game.
Yeah, scoop best of 3. See you at the game 2.
Yeah.
Flesh and Blood is a game that is immensely sequence important. You'll have it's incredible, and this was part of sort of my boot camp into becoming a really good player at that game was I'm lucky enough to be part of a Discord testing group where there's about 20 players in there, and the 20 players, it's like in that there's like 2 or 3 national champions. There's like multiple major tournament winners. Like we have Pro Tour finalists in there as well. So I play against the best in the world, and part of the beauty was obviously it was a nightmare early on learning from these players because, and like again, I'm the type where I don't care if I'm playing against the best in the world here. I know I'm gonna be at a disadvantage because they're just better than me, and I don't care if I lose. I honestly don't. I just want to make sure that I understand why and where I can improve. So that first week, I was jamming probably about 3 to 4 hours a day, leading up to.
I mean, you have to. Right?
Yeah, leading up to tournament season. And in the same way that when I prepare for casting a Gwent tournament, I'm casting these major tournaments. I need to be at my best as well. So, and the only way, there's no digital client. I can't just be jamming games. So I'm in there jamming games on webcam for hours and hours. Anyways, that
old
said,
school. Yes.
Sometimes you got to do it old school. But we're playing, and it's amazing how I have 4 cards, the same 4 cards that everyone else that I'm playing with can see. And like we're running through turns and just doing the theory on it. And I'm like, okay, here's my proposed attack plan and attack pattern. I'm like, boom, 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 boom. I'm presenting 13 damage. I'm like, that's not bad, right? They're like, all right, let's rewind. And then like, if you do this, you're now presenting 15 damage. I'm like, oh, damn. I'm like, okay.
That can
be
game changing, right?
Well, that's precisely it. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, that's not bad. I'm like, and they're like, not only are you presenting 15 damage, they're like, you're presenting it in more awkward numbers. And the reason why is like a lot of cards block damage for 3. So it's important to be at 4, like when you're attacking, to be at 4 or like 7 or those awkward numbers. And they're like, now you're presenting 15, but you're presenting 15 as a 7, like a 7, a 4, and like something else. So I'm like, oh, okay. Like,
and that's what separates the pros from the normal players.
Yeah, because they're like,
they went through these motions multiple times and know what's the best way to pilot the deck or the couple cards that you have in order to achieve the most. I had a game like yesterday or even today where I missed one trigger for 1 damage that would won me the game because it was last round where my opponent was down to 1 life. And if I didn't miss it, I would have him or her on that turn like easy. But I missed it. And I was like, shit, I missed it.
And that's on you, right?
Yeah. Then I remember when I missed it. So I'm like, okay, next time I will not miss that trigger. I will remember about it.
I finished second seed in one of the hardest qualifier tournaments in Canada. This is a store called Harry Tarantula, which is great. They sponsor me. They're awesome. harryt.com. Go to harryt.com, use the code FLAKE5 to get 5% off your first purchase, or use the code FLAKE to get anything else. Harry Tarantula is like an institution here in Ontario in terms of like they have like their glass case of all the people that go there that have won major tournaments. It's impressive. I play there, and I went there, and again like one of the hardest fields for Flesh and Blood, and I finished second seed in that tournament. So in the top 8, I was already over the moon, and I was already happy with my play because I took a very complex deck and I took it into a meta that was very oppressive, and I went and I finished second seed. And the only guy who was ahead of me ended up finishing third on the pro championship. Nice. So that said, I'm playing against the dude. I'm ahead by the score was like 36 to. He was at 4. 36 to 4 is the equivalent of like having a 10-0 soccer game lead. Yeah. Okay, that's how significant it is. And I made one sequencing error, which allowed my opponent to regain momentum and win that game. And to this person's credit, this dude's name is Raymond Chow. I call him my nemesis because we always face off against each other. And usually whoever wins our head-to-head ends up winning the tournament or going to the finals. And he beat me in the top 8 and ended up winning the whole tournament, I believe. And it was like, goddamn. But yeah, those little things. But I never missed that trigger again.
Anymore. And you learn from those experiences, right?
You have
especially if it's that that big pretty much.
But
So you learn from it easily.
sequencing so
Sequencing
important.
is super important. Yeah, it's super important in any game, and I feel that's kind of what separates the really good players from the masses. Let's say are actually the ones that kind of look into the sequencing, and that's why you replay these matches multiple times with the same deck, and sometimes based on the draws and based on how you maneuver around and how you sequence things, you get a different outcome every time. And I feel like with some janky combo decks, for example, you need to try to repeat the same thing as many times as possible. Sometimes you can't, but sometimes you do a different sequence which kind of gives you a similar outcome, or you have like two options to win, and either hitting one of these will kind of guarantee you the win. So that's really cool about them. And I feel like it just feels good, right? It just feels good. If you're piloting something broken and you win against like a tier 1 deck, or you go against a player who is, super awesome and is playing like this great deck, and you kind of bring something that, kind of is like that description of a card that is pretty much, beaten and broken down, but kind of, gets you from A to B. Maybe not the fastest way, maybe not the, not in the best way, but you actually make it, and you make it, you go out with a bang at the end pretty much.
Oh yeah. Well, it's fireworks one way or the other. It's a crash and burn on somebody's side. But I remember going to the first ever like big tournament, not the necessarily first big tournament, but it was a big tournament. It was like $1,000 tournament, and I brought a deck that nobody had seen, and I ended up going 8-0 and winning the whole thing.
Those are the best. Those are the best, because if they don't see them coming, they don't expect them, they haven't tested and played against them, then
they had no idea.
You might have something there.
It was great. I went into that meta, and it was like, and I didn't design the deck. The national champion designed it. I just had access to it, and I asked them. I said, I don't want to ruin your mojo. When you tell me the day that I can bust this out, and he said, okay, I'm playing in the national championships on this weekend. If you have a tournament that weekend, just play it at that weekend, because the decks will already be locked in. So he went undefeated and won nationals, and I won the local $1,000 tournament. We both went undefeated, and it was hilarious because we were both playing the same deck, and it was the same thing. People are like, what the hell is this? I said, don't worry about it. It was basically, are you blocking or are you not blocking? Like, that's the question. Like, I'm presenting my attacks. What are you doing? Like, people were just like, it's just stupid. It's stupid. It's a lot of little attacks, and they just go again and go again and go again and whatever. It's not a big deal. And I'm like, all right, it's not a big deal. Then freaking beat me. And it was hilarious because I was always like, I'm always the smiling, nice guy talking to everybody, so nobody takes me seriously because I'm not a brooding type of try hard, sweaty.
Try hard, like just like
I'm there to have a good time.
Focused.
And like, so my reputation there was like at all the minor events, like if I'm playing against somebody and they make a mistake, I let them take it back because I don't care. It's like, we're here to have fun. And I always tell people, I'm like, look, I'd rather play against the best optimal lines of play so that I can improve. So if you make a mistake, it does nothing for me in a no stakes tournament to capitalize on your error. So people thought I was a little bit, I mean, I'm not saying everybody, but there was a reputation where I was just the nice guy and easy win because I let you take back mistakes. But it was all business. There's $1,000 on the line. So I show up, and people thought it was easy wins. And they're like, oh, well, we're just going to do this and do this and do this. And I just dumpstered everybody. And
never underestimate your opponent, because you don't know who that person might be, right?
That's it. Don't mistake. The phrase is, don't mistake kindness for weakness. And I was absolutely effing ruthless, and I just destroyed them. And then in the ProQuest season to qualify for Pro Tour, which I did, I think I top 8'd like three of the 4 Pro Tours. And like and again, that's when people were like, slap some respect on that name.
Yeah. I mean, you can underestimate your opponent because you don't know what that person might be bringing. And attitude can be a lot of things. Like I really appreciated always players that I went against who clearly were better than me, and they were able to kind of tell me which mistakes I made, which some people might take as bad criticism, or like you might feel like someone's telling you what to do. Like, oh, you don't tell me what to do. I know how to play my deck, and I remember everything. But there were people like, oh, you missed at that turn you messed this and this trigger, and then you think about it. Okay, I did actually.
Yeah.
So it is making you better because it's constructive and it makes you a better player. And it's really nice to have this kind of back and forth. But yeah, also when I go to any FNMs or any other tournaments, I do it when I'm just there, smiling, happy, chilled out, and sometimes they don't expect like something to come out of it, but there are people that kind of come in like fully focused. This is just Friday Night Magic. You might,
Yeah.
you might win a couple boosters or a card from a booster, which maybe is worth something, maybe is not. But we're here just to have some fun and just play some cards and chat around, poke fun at each other and just chill.
That's part of it. You know what we can do? A good episode for us would be etiquette, card game etiquette. I think we should do an episode about card game etiquette, because what I was gonna say when you mentioned about people pointing out mistakes or whatever, like after, I feel bad. Like I just came back from another pro tour qualifier. I finished 11th out of 40, and I was pretty happy with that because again, it was another nightmare field of like champions. And but I played against somebody and I kind of beat the living shit out of them. And and like it's a good game. Like whatever it was. Like what I do when I beat someone, I always make a point to point out a really good turn that they had. And be like, that way it kind of throws a little bit of sunlight on an otherwise cloudy day, as it were. So, but also I sometimes, if they're making a glaring error that I've been exploiting for most of the game, I will let them know. I'll say, do you mind if I make a suggestion about this matchup? And if they say no, or if they're confident, then I'll just say, all right, no worries, like good luck moving on. And if they do, I very politely, I'll say, in this matchup, what you should be doing is XYZ. You should be preserving your equipment block for this particular card, which you just threw it away. So once I knew you had no equipment left, I was able to exploit this avenue, and that's how I won, was because I just kept doing this. And most of them are receptive, and some of them are not, but it is what it is. And but when I beat someone, I always make it a point to specifically pull out one really good thing that they did, so that it's positive reinforcement. And because that, when I was playing and I was making mistakes, trust me, I would rather have heard that I did something right along with where I can improve. But anyway, I think an etiquette.
I recently was playing in one where there was a guy that was teaching his friend how to pilot a deck. So he's like, I'm just going to be here. I'm not going to be helping him. I'm just going to be watching what he's doing. And then at the end, we can both critique if he's fine with it. And he was fine with it. And he played a mill deck, an MTG, which can be quite competitive also in Modern. And he piloted it semi-okay-ish, although he had some problems with not like drawing into specific cards also. Of course, I won that one 2-0, but we were kind of able to, at the end, sit down and kind of, tell him like, okay, you should have done this and this and that. If you did that, then that would work. You should probably also look into your deck. You should maybe switch that card out for something better. He's like, yeah, I know, but I'm kind of, trying to put the money together because Modern is quite expensive in order to get 4 copies of that card. So I only have 1 right now. So maybe that also, didn't let me carry out my game plan 100%. And it's nice because you're all learning from each other and you're all interacting in a positive way, which is, I feel like, community building and like, getting to know other people. And sometimes these things can, turn into friendships and some stuff beyond that. And that's really cool, right? And that's kind of the aspect of what you do it for, right? But yeah, I think we could do like a whole episode on etiquette. The most important things is, shower and use deodorant.
Yeah, I was about to say that's like got to be number one. That has to be number one. We'll do our next episode about etiquette. I think I like that. But
I love it.
Yeah, when it comes to improvement, man, pride is like the heaviest weight that you can shed when you're trying to
improve.
It's
the worst thing you can do. Yeah. It's the worst thing you can do. You get stuck in your head and you get mad about misplaying instead of thinking about what you could have done better or what kind of experience and baggage you're taking from this and how will you implement it later on. It's kind of like pulling yourself away from the table, floating behind yourself and looking at everything from like a higher perspective instead of just sitting there like steaming. I mean, we get pissed off. It's normal, but we need to go beyond that later on. I know it's very easy to say. I also get triggered and mad when I misplay or when I make mistakes. But yeah, you just need to kind of, slow down, Yeah, and don't be a person that kind of gets in your head like, oh my God, this was so bad. I misplayed. Or what the hell he's going to give me now? Going to tell me what I should have done? Like, yeah, screw him. I won't listen to that. Yeah. Pride is the worst.
Pride is the worst. All right. Shall we move to the mailbag, Mr. Pavel Burza?
Let's do it. All right, welcome back to the Q&A, where we answer your questions from Reddit and from Twitter. I just want to say before we start this that you must have enjoyed the rock climbing photo that I used of you and me on my bike. It's just beautiful.
It is beautiful.
I just wanted to mix it up, and I really appreciate the whole Flesh and Blood community, although I don't know it very well, for making so many good memes throughout the week after that rock climbing thing you did with Arya, and it was just so good. So good.
I am absolutely devastatedly terrified of heights. It is like paralyzing in certain regards. And it was enough of a, like, I was climbing the first time I climbed one of those walls. It was like the very basic thing, and I was like terrified. And I know it was like 10 feet up, but that's just in my head, and I can't get through it. I didn't go up the CN Tower with Arya. I'm like, I'm not doing it. She went with somebody, and I did not go. That said, the Flesh and Blood community absolutely knocked it out of the park. Of which Mercern, who is not necessarily part of the Flesh and Blood community, made in. So the person who took that photo or yanked the photo and made a contest out of it. The contest was basically, whoever can edit it the funniest wins. And that person contacted me, and she's like, okay, you pick your favorite and I'll pick my favorite. And I picked Mercern because Mercern took, when I was talking about The Departed, like the movie The Departed, he took the photo and took it with the scene where where Costello's beating Costigan's arm, thinking there's a wire in there. And he took it was just so good. Anyways, I love it. I love it. And you guys can, anybody who wants to can take my photos and do whatever the hell they want with them, because I don't care. But I thought it was hilarious.
It was really awesome. Really awesome. Okay, first question. This is a really nice one. This was the one that I had to think a little bit about. So this one is by Fontillion on Reddit. Both of you are very competent and charismatic casters, podcasters, interviewers. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is the secret to making your interlocutor? I always have a problem with this.
Interlocutor.
Interlocutor.
I don't know. I don't even know what that is. I've never used that word in my life. Yeah.
Feel comfortable and cool. How do you have a genuine and interesting conversation with a stranger?
It's a fascinating question, and it's a skill
it's a big one.
It is, and it's a skill like everything else. It's like juggling or playing the guitar. You have to practice it, and you have to be put in those positions. Nobody is going to pick up a guitar and sound like, Jimi Hendrix the first time. That just doesn't occur. I don't even think that's in the outlandish lore of like Kim Jong-il. Like you read about this guy, and he's like, he could shoot 36 on a golf course, and like, and taught Elvis how to play guitar or whatever. That's not, but that it's a skill like everything else. So first of all, thank you so much for the kind words. It's very, very kind of you, Fontillan or Fontillan. That it's very, very, I appreciate it. How do you make someone feel comfortable and cool? I think the best way to make someone feel comfortable and cool is to make them feel prepared. And that's why whenever I interview someone, anytime you see me doing an interview with somebody, they know in advance what's coming their way, because this is not about gotcha moments. It's not about trying to pin someone down or ambush them.
Unless that's your style.
Well, unless that's your style. But if that's your style,
people like interview that way, but they're pretty much,
Well, those are. Well, listen. I mean, and those can be effective, but like that basically is one way to tarnish a reputation and give you absolutely no integrity.
Yeah.
Because then if people see that that's what you do, they'll never trust you to be on your show or to talk to you. Well, we just had the Pro Tour Championship for Flesh and Blood. I interviewed many of the players. And right before the camera would go on, you pull them aside, you say, here's what I'm going to ask you. Is there anything you'd like for me to ask you so that you can say? and then you go from there. So they know what's coming, so they're already preparing in their mind. There's none of those ahs, whatever, which makes for a smoother conversation. But how to have a genuine and interesting conversation with a stranger, I mean, that can be difficult because to me, they're not really strangers. I don't just yoink somebody randomly. There's usually some sort of basis for what you're there for, whether it's a card game, a win, or whatever, and then you can pull from that common pool. One of the biggest sort of issues I find with conversations and podcasts is that they're very superficial and they don't allow the guest to really flourish what they want to say and show who they are. It's this sort of laundry list of dot point questions that they ask and answer, you know? So you need to...
That's what separates the good podcasts from the ones that are kind of just like an interview show, which doesn't bring anything to the table, right? Apart from just answering questions, right?
Well, that
people actually show a little bit of their personality, and it's up to the hosts there to kind of find that personality and just like take it and yoink it out of that person and see like, look, this person has this and this and that, right?
Yeah, and you also need to understand what the sort of format of the show is. Like, this is not an interview show. This is you and I having discussions every week, and we love it.
Conversation.
Yeah, we don't necessarily have guests on the show, though we have, but that's not what this is for. This is just kind of like two dudes who absolutely adore card games and have played them for decades, jamming about cards every week.
We can talk about them for days.
Yeah, like Pavel and I are like brothers. We love each other immensely, and we have common ground, so we can talk about this stuff forever. But when you're bringing on somebody else, you have to understand that you're bringing them on for a reason. When I, like my other podcast, the Instant Speed podcast, the Flesh and Blood podcast, it has a completely different feel because you're not going to hear me speak as much because I have a guest on every week. And the objective of the show is to show the listeners in the community why this person is so freaking rad and why this person is worth the time. So you ask the questions that really open up their personality, and I'm bringing them on the show because I know who they are and I know about them. So you explore that and you knock on the right doors so that they're opened to the nice stuff that you want to see.
I do the same thing with Twig. Like I take the focus away from me and I put the focus on the person that I'm talking to by trying to asking, of course, questions, which some of them are more or less the normal ones that I always ask. But sometimes if I know that person is well known for doing A, B, or C, I will pull those things out from that person to kind of showcase his or her personality and kind of showcase more about that person. So the people watching or the people listening can kind of like, oh, okay, so that person is about this and this and that, or that person is into this and this and that, right? And that kind of shows you more of the personality. And I feel like with us, whenever we're interviewing people, I think the most important thing we can do on our side is to make that person feel like, kind of take away the stress, because I feel like a lot of these people, they're stressed because there's a light put on them. Like we're used to being here, having like a camera in front of us, having lights in front of us, and being kind of aware of the questions that we're going to ask. Like we are more prepared than the person that is coming and we're talking, straight out of, just competing in a match. Maybe it's like a whole day of matches and that person is already tired. That person, wants to, get at least 15 minutes rest or something like that. But that person is just being interviewed on the spot after something that has happened. So you need to make them feel comfortable, less stress, because they've been stressed already throughout, an hour of a game that they were playing. So let them kind of, vent a little bit, show maybe a little bit of personality if they're really into that. I mean, we've been known in Gwent of having people like Tailbot who was just, one big personality. And that you didn't even need to ask like specific questions. He would make that personality shine, and he knew how to play that persona, and he was different on camera, different when you spoke to him off of it. And, these are things that kind of will happen, but sometimes someone is really cool and you want to showcase something about them. So you kind of pull that stuff out of that person. But I feel like, when it comes to just talking to people, like I'm known for having like the weirdest random conversations from strangers coming up to me and just starting talking to me on the street, even if I don't know them. And this has always happened to me since I was, a teenager, because I always would have like homeless people come to me and like talk about their whole life. And I've always been just there listening. And I feel like that's the problem when it comes to talking to strangers and people. Like, people do not listen to others and what they have to say because we're always rushing somewhere. We're stuck on our phone or, browsing through social media while we're going somewhere. And instead of just like being in the moment and just having like, a person come up to you, maybe that person needs to talk to you or they need to talk about something or vent about something. And you just might draw them in by looking at them and smiling, for example. And that already is something that they kind of get hooked on, and you start the conversation. Sometimes you don't need much in order to start a conversation with another person. But sometimes I feel like, it is kind of bound to happen, but sometimes it's also difficult to start a conversation from someone. And for us, when we're doing podcast interviews, we always have one kind of common ground that we can circle back into, which is the game we're playing or the game where, if it's a casting gig. So we have the topic. The topic is there, right?
Yeah.
It's an event, it's a game, it's something connected to that. And we kind of, whenever we kind of get sidetracked or there are some weird questions, we just go back to simple questions like, oh, which card you thought was the best?
Yeah, you have a touch point.
Yeah, you have a touch point that you kind of go to. And with strangers, sometimes it's hard to find that touch point because you don't know what walk of life that person is coming from. But once you ask a couple questions, you might be able to find some similarities or whatever, right? So that's how you kind of start a conversation going.
All right.
Good question.
Very good question. Next question is from Bullfishy, asking, is there any way we can get an in-game chat lobby?
Oh, no, please no.
Please no. Holy Moses, no. Listen.
We had this conversation so many times within the Gwent team.
No,
and
don't.
We've always come to the same thing. Chat within the game itself, super toxic.
Of course. Toxic. Have you guys ever played any other card game that has a, like, how many times?
I did.
Oh, dude, like, which game?
Magic Online.
Okay.
The old Magic Online. It has an in-game chat client. And that is like the worst thing. Normally people don't use it. Totally don't use it. But there's like this 5% of people that use it. Everybody just like, hurry up.
Yeah.
Oh, you're playing this shit again.
Yep.
I'm forfeiting. And it's like, whoa, where did you get that deck list? Did you just copy out MTG Goldfish? Well, creative.
Yep,
or
basically.
You suck. Or you're a dumbass. Why are you playing this?
It's like,
see you later.
Precisely.
How does that feel?
Like, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
As somebody who started the digital card game stuff with Hearthstone, you know how many times, like, I would play Freeze Mage or Control Warrior, where at the end of a win, like I would just all of a sudden, bing, friend request. I'm like, I know, I get it.
Happened to us on GOG. Happens to us all the time.
I get it on GOG. But first of all, I stopped any friend request on GOG. I immediately decline. I used
to have more. I'm at the limit. I just invited everybody.
I can have so many. I just don't want them because every time at the end of when I used to stream like 5-6 hours a day, by the end of the day I'd have maybe about like 5 or 6 requests, and sometimes it's like a legitimate question. So I'd answer them like, hey, like, like for a week I would accept them, and 98% of them were telling me that I should jump off a bridge and kill myself because I played whatever XYZ.
Yeah.
Look, in a perfect world, it would be wonderful to have a chat where you can say, hey, that was a wicked play, or hey, I didn't think it was that card, but that was cool. But that's not the reality, and unfortunately that's the case. In-game chat lobbies, if you want to talk about the game and like, I know what you're saying here. It says, I believe it would help bring the in-game community together instead of Gwent feeling like a solo card game. But you have that. You have the Discord, you have the forums.
You do it outside the game, and you should be doing it outside the game because you actually put in the effort in order to find a community or go to a community that focuses around a content creator, streamer, whatever, or around your favorite game. Go there, talk to people there. But I feel like in the heat of the moment, if we lose or we make mistakes, and we are creatures of habit, going and just venting at the other person, and it's never good. And I just say this: if you ever think an in-game chat lobby is good, play League of Legends. I know I've played League back in the day. I know a lot of people who still play League. And if you mention every chat, in-game chat, that is like the first thing that people, when they're playing League, they turn off. They mute the hell out of it so they don't see anything coming from there. That's why they added it there, because people are so toxic. And I think it also is kind of based off of the player base age, because I feel like there's a lot of like, these developing teenagers with their hormones still buzzing and going crazy that will call your mom all the bad stuff in the world, and you don't want to hear that about your mom, right?
Yeah, probably not. I love my mom. Yeah,
Exactly.
I will say this: when I would play a lot of Overwatch, I have never been called the N-word more in my life than when I played May for a month. That was basically that was my experience. So yeah, in-game chats can go F themselves in my opinion, because 90% of it is the worst thing ever. That's just my opinion.
Unless of course we would live in a place where if you want to have an in-game chat, you need to scan your ID and you play under your real name and last name.
Oh,
and there's like a way where you could actually track these people. Like I've been in this boat where numerous times I would have to go out and ban people on Gwent because of the stuff that they did post-match on GOG, with people coming with like receipts of, or like screenshots saying like, I played against this player, this is what I got. And you see like such like big lumps of shit thrown at other people that, I mean, you don't want that in your life.
Oh, I've reported.
That's toxic.
I've reported people. I'm not ashamed. I'm like, no, dude, you want to be a dickhead? Cool. I said, basically whenever when that would happen, I'd get those requests and I'd say, hey, and in my head, I'm like, it's either somebody recognizes my name and wants to say hello, and I'm all for that. That's cool. Or somebody wants, somebody has a question or something. That's cool. But 98% of it has always been terrible, and some of it has been so freaking vile that I've been like, all right, I would just say, all right, I've taken a screenshot. I'm reporting your account, and I don't know what else happens, and then I block them, and then I send in the report, and that's it. And I don't care what happens after that. But yeah, there we go. In-game chat lobby. No gracias.
No gracias. Please, no way. All right, the spicy curveball that Flake threw towards me.
Hey, listen. Okay, ask the question.
Of doom.
Ask the question.
Do you recognize the mistakes you made with the last card drop, as well as the following balance patch? And if so, how will you learn from it?
I pulled this out because this is a very obviously sensitive topic. But this is an example, ladies and gentlemen, of approaching a sensitive topic in a constructive way, because this is definitely not praise. This is definitely not them saying, hey, you tried your best. This is Baguette of Doom saying, you guys screwed up. Like it's undeniable that, it's screwed up. How are you going to improve moving forward? This is not flattering in any way, but it is a very appropriate way to approach a subject and saying, y'all are stupid, fix your shit, which is typically
which is the majority of the comments we get.
Which is often how this goes. So Baguette of Doom, I appreciate. Listen, and this is the first one I responded to, and I said
it's well worded,
but it's a genuine concern, and I didn't want to shy away from this, nor do I think that you guys should. I say you guys, I mean CDPR and whatnot. So listen, I guess the first question is obviously like, is there a sense that perhaps the previous card patch could have been different, or do you feel like it was a success after the fact?
There were some things which were good. There are some things which are bad. Of course, like in anything. For sure, we have learned a lot, and I feel like the countermeasures that we'll be bringing with upcoming update will kind of fix these things. I know a lot of people have been saying that they've been telling us for a long time that things were not right with Erendite, and we should have jumped the gun and kind of nerfed it at that time. I feel like what we've learned as a balance team is to take things a little bit slower and actually look into specific data and kind of back up our decisions. even if sometimes maybe they're not the right calls. We all make mistakes, of course. But for sure, with this one, we have kind of learned a lot, especially when it comes to doing things in the future. And I feel like with every update that we've been introducing, or any new cards which we're introducing to the game, we've been learning and kind of adjusting our strategy in order to move forward. And yeah, you can expect for sure, like we'll be doing some stuff. I cannot, of course, tell you 100% that we will not make same mistakes ever in the future, because that's impossible to do, because as humans we're flawed and we're bound to make mistakes. Maybe there will be different ones, but we'll also learn from those. And I feel like we've been very consistent when it comes to learning from the mistakes we made, in terms of like trying to take Gwent to a different place, and kind of always like owning up to the mistakes that we made. And I feel like here you won't expect anything less from us. So I feel like everything's going to be good. We just need to, you sometimes get into a rut where you know, you need to kind of claw yourself out of. So maybe the last card drop wasn't that big of a mistake. I feel what happened after with the next balance patch that we had, so the recent one at the beginning of this of the previous month, because we're already in June, so in May, were things that kind of we could have done a little bit differently. But of course we learned from it. And if not, if someone's listening, we should totally do a meme of the procession of penance card, and have Jean, me, and Vlad there as the procession of penance, kind of walking through the streets of Novigrad. Shame. Exactly.
Yeah, just keep your clothes on, buddy.
Yeah, will do. Yeah, will do.
That's part of the CCG etiquette. So yeah, hopefully that answers that. I mean, listen, I believe that most, if not all, metas are immensely impacted and driven by the latest card drops. So if the latest card drops are driven by neutral cards, then ultimately those neutral cards are going to be the focal point of the meta moving forward. And since they're neutral, they're going to bleed into every faction, meaning that it's going to seem the same, because you're going to see the same cards in different decks, and it's going to be like these build around cards. But that is also a consequence of that special word called power creep, which is you got to make the new cards attractive, and if they're attractive, they're going to be played, and if they're going to be played, people are going to get tired of them. So it's that's kind of the part of it. And you know, I feel like it's funny because the next wave of cards, whenever they are, I don't know what they are, but if they're not neutral centric, then it might be a big shift back to devotion, and then people are going to wonder, you know, why devotion's so popular and such. But learning from the mistakes is the key element here, but also not hiding from them either. And I think that's fair, but it's a process. So there you go. Next question's from Tankoff. This one's for you.
Whoa, communication question for
Burza. Asking,
why are qualifiers not streamed on the official CDPR channel, and why are results, brackets, and such posted by third-party organizers like Claymore or ESC Card Gaming? Maybe you could also elaborate on the relation with these teams. Thank you very much, and as always, love the two and the experience, the Flurza experience.
And the experience. That's what we're trying to give you here. We're selling you an experience, and all it's going to cost you is $0, zero złote is what we're asking from you.
I think it's the thing is, first of all, that we always thought that qualifiers wouldn't be that interesting for the majority of people interested in Gwent. So we kind of always thought that this is a type of tournament that we will not broadcast anyway as CDPR. And it's also one of those things that we always leave to Claymore or ESC now, because they are fully capable of fully like having those things run and kind of adminning the whole thing with a minimum presence from us, which kind of also is the fact that less of our employees from the esports team actually have to sit throughout the weekend and manage this, because as you probably know or don't know, We also have a lot of things normally going on from 9 to 5 on our normal weekdays, and the weekend is kind of a time that we want to take off. Exception here is opens, which I feel that um, they're kind of a little bit more prestigious here, where we always had the players come to these. So we always have the extra effort of actually preparing the studio, having a proper stream for this, and putting more emphasis on those. But I mean, if there would be such a high interest of having qualifiers kind of see more traction, and kind of if the viewer base was maybe a little bit better, then we would have done more for these. But that's pretty much the truth. Like, actually having our employees take some time off and not work throughout the weekends, that's one thing. And also, we always thought them to be less important than opens, for example. I know maybe that's not the case for some of you, like if it's top 16 or top 64, but it's pretty much 2 days out from the weekend, and a lot of stuff that we would need to go through. And I feel like you need to take into account that our esports team within Gwent is kind of people who, yeah, they do different stuff from 9 to 5 also. And that if we had like a dedicated maybe esports team, that would make sense. But I think it just comes down to a little bit of resources and the importance of qualifiers themselves.
I think people are always just hungry for competitive
More.
anything.
More competitive stuff. Yeah.
Hey, that's just,
I get that.
yeah.
I get that.
And yeah, like the fact that like people want to tune in, it's just because it's hard to wait like, you know, every 3 months for a major tournament to see the best players in the world play. And yeah, you got streams and stuff like that, but there's different stakes, and competitive card gaming is like there's always like this insatiable appetite for it. And I live for that. I love it.
I get it. It makes total sense. Like I have the same thing in games that I'm interested in. I always look for more, more information about it, or more possible tournaments that I can win, because by watching these and kind of listening to the commentary, you also learn a lot.
Last question for the show is from Michael Loda through Twitter, asking, It always bothered me that Hearthstone had only one currency that was for both card progression and cosmetic progression. So if you wish to progress your cosmetics, such as get golden cards or different card backs, you have to do that by sacrificing the collection progression. You can craft less cards. So for those who don't know, there's a dust system in Hearthstone, where if you want to create a card that you don't already have, it'll cost you dust. But if you also want to upgrade it to a premium version, it'll also cost you dust. So there's no scraps versus meteorite powder, so you can, parse out both for different things. It's one universal currency for card progression and cosmetic progression. So what Michael's saying here is that it's harder for you to create a collection and upgrade it because you're using the same currency. He goes on to say, it sucks for free-to-play players, of course. Gwent doesn't have this problem, though, and it works very well. I don't understand why Hearthstone developers are unwilling to change it. What do you think of that? What are the ramifications and negative side effects of such a system? So Hearthstone's economy is absolutely just terrible. I say that it's a very simple economy. It's a very straightforward economy, but it is a very scarce kind of like trickle economy. You're not getting that much to play. And that has been improved lately, I believe, with the implementation of like the battle pass. But even if you buy the battle pass, you're not getting a whole lot. The math was done when the battle pass was actually first tossed out there by Hearthstone. A lot of the major Hearthstone people actually did the math about it and said, all right, it'll take you X amount of time to generate X amount of coin, and if you play and complete the entire battle pass, you're making about X amount of gold per hour, which in comparison to the old way, with the old quests, you're generating a little bit more. So this is actually a flashier way to get less. And then they upped it and they improved it, which is fine. But ultimately, the Hearthstone economy is terrible. It is absolutely terrible. It is so hard to generate a collection the old-fashioned way, which is through
very hard
opening packs, gaining gold. Yeah, can't do it.
Gave up very quickly.
Can't do it. The only one thing I will say that I think is okay with it, which other card games don't necessarily do, is you can take your garbage cards that you don't want, break them down, and build cards that you do want, which for Magic you can't do. You can't do that with other card games. With certain other card games. But still, on the hierarchy, on a 1-10 ratio, 10 being the best, Hearthstone is a fat 2 in terms of the economy and free-to-play friendly. So what are the ramifications and the negative side effects of having an economy that uses the same resources for cosmetics as for progression? You're going to have people who are going to never really experience the cosmetic aspect of blinging out a deck because they're more inclined to say, like, if they like the game, they're going to hoard those resources for new sets to build and complete collections that they want. They're never going to really have enough cards to say, like, I need to break these down because I want to make a golden paladin deck or a golden priest deck. Can't do that because if you're doing that, you're doing it at it's a 4-to-1 rate. So you can craft 4 legendaries for every 1 golden legendary you craft. So would you rather have 4 ultra powerful cards or 1 ultra powerful card that has sparkles on it? So you're creating a system where the people who are taking advantage of it or using it are going to have to make a tough decision of, do I want to play one flashy deck or do I want to have a fuller collection? And that's a really easy choice to make when you are free to play.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say so, but it boils down from a developer perspective to the bottom line, which is the biggest focus is actually, yes, it's sorry to say, but it is money, and it always will be money in this case, because they like giving the player less incentives here in order to or giving the player a choice where he or she needs to decide, or do I get new shiny things, or do I focus more on getting the cards that I need? They here have the conundrum, and you can't have both. And even if you try to have both, it hardly ever happens that you're able to do that, right? And it comes to just, and it's very hard. I don't want to say that maybe this is for sure done on purpose and it's all the bad companies trying to earn a lot of money, which kind of is something that you would think. But sometimes I feel like it's also the problem of finding good balance in the economy. And I feel like when we're starting off with Gwent early in the beginning, with us always being player centric, being fair to the players, these are important things that are in our core values as a company. Kind of bit us in the butt, because I feel like we've been always very generous when it comes to Gwent, and we have a lot of players who have been with us since times of closed and open beta, and these players just accumulated so many things and have so many scraps and stuff like that in order to craft things and enjoy them in the game, that this is kind of causing us to be earning a little bit less than we would like to. But I mean, we would never do anything for the player base to feel bad, or to feel like something was taken away from them, or to feel cheated in some way. So these are things that we've always like moved away from, and it was less important, like our own maybe growth here and trying to make as much money on it as possible. Plus, I feel like for us, it's just been a learning curve. Like we very quickly saw that, giving the possibility to have full mill value on cards which were nerfed were just causing players just to have more resources, and maybe sometimes even too many resources. And we still have, this problem within Gwent, where we're trying to find a resource sink for players in order to invest their scraps and stuff like that towards things, in order for them to deplete the amount of scraps or other stuff which they have already accumulated, and kind of have an even playing field where these players are kind of coming in and actually spending a little bit of money in order to get something which will go towards our own growth. So I mean, this is always a fine line and balance that you will see in any multiplayer online game, which has vanities, but also requires you to craft things or create things in order to stay on a competitive level. That it's like it can go both ways. You can be on the winning end, you can be on the losing end, or you can try to find at least some amount of balance where you're both the player is happy and you're happy because of the revenue that you're making.
It's a fine balance, but ultimately, let's be real.
It's a tough one. It's a really, really tough one. and it's not easy to achieve. Trust me.
Definitely not easy. Just, I will say this, ladies and gentlemen, please be immensely happy that the economy in Gwent is the way it is, and it's not like MTGA or it's not like Hearthstone, because holy Moses.
No.
Yeah. It is
very hard to get a very good, nice competitive deck in MTGA. Although I feel like they have a very nice this mastery pass. I always use that one, and through that I just get more boosters, which lets me later on craft more stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm up on the I have the ability to create the cards that I need for my decks if I'm playing standard.
It's so hard because unless you're very prolific at and very potent at like limited, where you can invest your gems and your gold and get a plus EV return on it. If you can get plus return on it, then you can kind of go infinite and get cards, and that's how you build a collection. But that's time intensive to do that. But I mean, anytime there's a rotation and I have to use wild cards for new lands, like that is always the most painful part.
Yeah, I hardly ever do that. I just have a janky like mana base that hardly works.
Well, that's
but if it works, it works, right?
Like the thing that bothers me the most is that these rare lands, these dual lands, are like
you need them.
It's like 25% of like the cost of a deck is just like in the lands.
Why are lands so expensive in MTG? Like,
why is the resource
so important?
Yeah, it's like, why does the resource situation have to cost me the most out of it? Like, like, okay, I need 4 breeding pools. They're $20 a piece. It's $80 for 4 lands, just so I can
have 4. I can borrow you them.
I had 4. I sold 3 of them. I have 1 in my commander deck, and that's about it. All right, that's the mailbag this week, Mr. Pavel Burza.
Woohoo!
Feels good, doesn't it?
Awesome questions.
Yeah, they were good.
Because we love them. Good stuff.
And that's it. I had mentioned it at the beginning of the show that I think, the focus of the show is very much on card games and not necessarily just on one specific one. But I mean,
we always find a way to circle back to Gwent because it's in our card pool.
It's in our DNA. We'll always talk about Gwent. But that's the thing. So for those
we also throw a little bit of MTG, a little bit of Flesh and Blood, a little bit of Star Wars TCG, which you play, and all the other Hearthstone. Maybe not a lot of lore and stuff like that because we don't really play a lot of those. Maybe I don't, but Flake, maybe you do.
Oh, I just got into Legends of Runeterra pretty damn hard. Like the Path of Champions, I've been busting the hell out of that. It's just very satisfying, and it's a good way to progress and like unlock stuff. So without the stresses of playing against meta decks that beat the crap out of you and you don't have a big collection. So playing PvE is just wonderful. Yeah. Wonderful.
Now what we need to check out is Marvel Snap because that's the new kid on the block.
I applied for it way back when and I got nothing. Everybody and their mother is in on this game, and here I am not
I'm waiting. I want it on PC or on, iOS at least.
But I applied for the standard beta. I applied as a content creator for the standard beta. I gave them all of my credentials. Nothing. They don't like me. But some hack like Spessy gets in. 5? Did I what?
Did you use the code Flurza 5?
I should have. Actually, I should use the code. I should use the code Flurza like 20, just like to show that I'm in business.
Yeah.
So didn't quite work out. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all card game appropriate ages, thank you so much for listening to the Flurza Experience. I'm going to end the show as I always do and say I love you, Pavel.
I love you too, Flake. Thank you, everybody, for watching. It was another amazing show, and I'm happy that we get to do these because it's the best. This is the best recording of the whole week always, to sit down and talk to my friend about card games.
Damn right.
That's all that matters.
That's it. We would have this anyways if we just happened to record it and show you about it. But friends, don't forget, you're not losing if you're learning, so keep playing the card games. You might win. We'll see you next week on the Flurza Experience. Bye.
Bye.